Hi everybody, my name's Paul Jones. I'm the Chief Digital Information Officer here at the Trust. Fantastic to see you all at this report out. I think this is our first one of the year, so we'll be starting 2025 off to a storming start. I can see Thomas is raring to go with the Kaizen event update about the cardiac surgical pathway. So Thomas and team, I'll hand over to you if that's all right.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. So I'm in the driver's seat instead of Rowan today, so I thought I'd get the slides straight up. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming. So my name's Tom. I'm one of the improvement specialists within KPO, and I'm joined by the ACC and cardiac teams. I'd like to talk to you today about the Achieving the Ultimate Cardiac Surgical Pathway, which is our 3-day Kaizen event that we've done across adult critical care and cardiorespiratory CSU. So this is our project form. So this tells us what the problems were that were framed by our sponsors, which there were delays within patient flow within the department from the cardiac critical care unit, also known as L4 to L16. So we've kept the project to this specific area, but you'll see that there's other areas that within the departments and across sites that we can improve communication on to try and enhance that patient flow. Some of the themes were talking about setup production, that push and pull production, looking at huddles and innovation funnels. So looking at the problems and challenges that were framed to us, it was to maintain effective communication with all members of the staff within the cardiac surgical pathway. And we wanted to look into this process with an aim of reducing waste within the pathway and reduce the patient's length of stay and improve the overall patient experience. So on the right-hand side, we've got some of the timed observation forms that we've been collecting as part of the event, which we've used as our baseline data, which has fed into our target progress report. So we looked at things like our sub-lead times, such as the time that was spent waiting for a bed for L4 to send a patient to 16, a quality metric around the amount of phone calls that were being made from L4 to L16, another sub-lean time, so we called it amber to green, which was assessing the discharged patients first to see if we could bring down that time from 45 minutes to make the initial phone call, and then some quality defects by looking at the experience from the patient's perspective and from the staff perspective. This is an overview of our value stream map that we collected the data from. So as you can see, we've got multiple Kaizen bursts for our areas of opportunity that we discovered whilst mapping out this process. You'll notice that some of the high-level steps that are coloured in grey have been raised out, and this is because we didn't look at those specific areas because of the pathway being so large, but we wanted to highlight the importance of them being as part of the pathway. We also measured the amount of value add within the process and the non-value add, which we'll be able to talk to a little bit later. But ultimately, we wanted to show through this map that there's a process that we've been following for the patients. So focusing on the communication within the department, this is the stretch of the concept of a spaghetti diagram, and the process we looked at were the first top two, which is L4 at the top and L16. So all the timings and baseline data were collected as a result of that, green representing the flow of information and yellow the flow of operators, so our staff within the process. The reason we wanted to show this was that although we looked at this step in the process and we found that there were multiple areas of improvement, there are other patients within the cardiac patient base and the adult critical care patient base that there are multiple conversations for, including with patient flow to go back to their respective areas such as vascular and neuro. So just wanted to highlight that there were multiple conversations being had with different departments that we weren't able to focus on as part of this event, but very much an important part of the work that's being done there. So getting on to our first PDSA 1, I'll introduce our first member of the team.
Hi, my name's Ruth. I'm the matron for cardiac ICU. So looking at the first PDSA, we were concentrating on the cardiac surgical pathway improvement huddle board, and this is what we're wanting to very much focus on, identifying and establish an improvement huddle board for both of the departments on the ICU and on L16. The aim of this is to improve the collaboration and the communication between both departments by effectively displaying clear progress of the reports and the improvements that we've made from this event. So we plan to both get boards, which will be updated monthly by both departments, and they'll also be introducing huddles around these boards to be able to explain the progress to the team so everyone involved is aware of the improvements that we are making. The study from the PDSA will be able to get feedback from the Times observations, so any improvements that have been made, feedback from the team, and also morale metrics. We also plan to modify as required. So anything that crops up, we will be able to implement and change anything that needs to be done to the boards. Have monthly catch-ups as well within both departments to keep a valuable relationship and clear lines of communication open between both departments, and also provide a space for the team to be able to comment on the boards as well, and add anything useful that we might need to know that's ongoing throughout the process as well.
Hello, my name's Cassie. I'm one of the Band 7 Senior Sisters on Cardiac ICU. I'm just presenting PDSA 2, which is looking at the amber starts for an award round. So currently at the minute we have our nurse in charge on a night shift, which identifies any patients that they feel may be able to be stepped down to the ward, either to L16 Hobbs or L16 ward that morning on ward round. They populate that on PPM. But currently we have 15 beds on Cardiac ICU, and generally the ward starts bed space 1 through to 15. So if we potentially have amber patients in bed 1 and bed 15, there is a bit of a big delay in between, obviously reviewing patients in beds 2 through to 14. So the problem we've got is obviously a delay in identifying definite step downs, so switching them from amber to green. So the plan was to increase patient flow by identifying any quick patients that could be stepped back to L16, whether it be Hobbs or the ward earlier. So to do that, the nurse in charge on the night shift would need to identify what they deem as any amber patients that could be stepped down and put that on PPM. And then the nurse in charge on the day shift would direct the ward round to the amber patients first. So seeing those amber patients before we look at the rest of the patients that we don't feel are going to be able to be stepped out of our bed base. For the study, we are timing the start of the ward round time, because then that will link to the full lead time when we look at PDSA 3 and 4, which it'll make more sense once they're presented. So we've already identified this week that there's some education elements that need polishing. We saw from sort of over this week when we've been measuring it that there's not as consistency with the nurses in charge populating the amber patients and then also populating the green patients on PPM. Engagement, there was a little bit of resistance when we headed straight into day 2, because people generally like to start in numerical order. So it's just getting the engagement from the full MDT team as to why we're doing this. So we're communicating out to the full MDT team as to why, you know, this is a good thing for the patient pathway and to help with flow. And the other thing that we talked about this week was having like a visual control on PPM. So at the minute we're just writing it in words in the box on PPM. So if we could have a visual control that when we put them as amber, that actually the box turns amber. And then on ward round, when we deem them green, that the box turns green.
Hi, my name's Vicky Bentley and I'm the Senior Sister on Ward L16, which is the cardiac surgical ward and incorporates 4 cardiac surgical Hobbs beds. So one of the biggest issues once the beds have been established on ICU for step down was working out how long and how many patients we could take from crit care back into the cardiac surgical bed base. So the plan that we had on the ward, which we've already implemented now, was to start to review our patients in Hobbs first. So it was just changing the ward and how we do the ward round on the ward, and also reviewing the patients that we expect to be discharged home first, so that decisions can be made earlier in the day. And then we'll review the remaining patients after we reviewed those first Hobbs patients and the patients planned for discharge. The study part of that was ward round practice on ward 16. There are some issues with the start time. It doesn't start as promptly as it should. So there's some work which we're going to do around that. Again, the order of the patients which were reviewed, Cassie's touched on that for ward 4 cardiac ICU, but we were the same. We started at bed 1 and finished at bed 28. So we're just trying to rejig how we do that, which is feeling a little bit strange, but it just means that the patients that are fit for discharge, hopefully, or for step down out of Hobbs, can be identified earlier. And the finish time as well, which again, the ward round can take any any length of time, really, depending on the acuity of the patients that we've got. So acting was just educating staff around trying to get that ward round started promptly at 8:30. We need to reinforce, as the nurses in charge, the required structure of the ward round. And then obviously once we've made sure that we know which potential beds that we have, it's then communicating that communication back to Ward 4, the adult critical care department.
Hi, my name's Paula. I'm one of the Band 7s on cardiac ICU and PDSA 4 owner. The problem that we were finding was after we've done the ward rounds that it was taking too long for CICU to confirm with Ward 16 how many beds would be available for the patients to step into. We were making multiple phone calls to L16 and there were inconsistencies in which phones we were using. We have deck phones, we have mobile phones, and we have ward phones. So the ultimate plan was to improve the communication between Ward 16, Hobbs and CICU and make it more streamlined. So we identified that the nurse in charge on CICU should be using the deck phone to contact the mobile phone on Ward 16 directly. So there was that two-way conversation between the nurses in charge rather than ringing the ward phone, waiting for somebody to answer it, going and finding the nurse in charge. That was causing a delay. The call should happen immediately after all of the patients that were amber have turned green, and that CICU should identify which senior nurse will make the call, that it doesn't necessarily have to be the coordinator. It could be just an identified person to do that initial call. We then studied, in the study, we monitored the time of the initial call from CICU to Ward 16 and the time it took for the returning call with the final decision on beds. We also monitored how many calls it took to establish the bed availability, and our plan is to reduce those calls. If you move on to the next couple of slides, that actually will show you where we looked and where we looked and what timings we had for those calls that were made.
And then looking at the data that we've collected, so from our baseline data, we were able to implement some of these tests of change. And as caveated throughout the PDSAs, there is some standard work that is continuously ongoing within these. But we saw some successes with regards to the time spent waiting for a bed on day 1 and 2, but unfortunately, due to clinical pressures, we did see a significant increase for yesterday. But we have seen an overall improvement from the phone call from L4 to 16, so showing that that is making some improvement with that contact. But again, standard work of implementing how many phone calls need to be made within that time. We've also started measuring the contact back from L16 to L4 to establish what the capacity will be. So this is a new metric that we were able to test on day 1 and 2, but we'll be continuing to look at throughout the future events of 30 days to 60 days. We're also looking at the amber to green. So again, that discharged patient, reviewing how long it takes to actually make that phone call. Once we saw that there was some improvement from the baseline, although not quite within the target, we did see some improvements. But again, due to clinical pressures and other things that arose within the ward, such as a new consultant coming on, not knowing the patient base, we were able to implement what that time was. And then again, looking at how staff and patients find the service at the moment. But due to clinical pressures, it has been difficult to see the positivity that's come out of some of these events. But I think the longer that we keep implementing this continuous improvement and standard work, we'll hopefully see some good changes from that.
So what went well, the key learning from this week, staff engagement, definitely not just with ourselves that were on the 3-day event at the beginning of the week, but actually when we went out onto the Gemba and spoke to the team that were out there, you know, they were all very, very passionate about cardiac surgery, very, very engaged and having conversations about, you know, some improvements that they kind of, you know, want to be involved in. Collaborative, being cross CSU, so obviously we work not just with L16 but there's theatres as well, so the collaborative sort of work involved between us all, that's been really, really good. Improving the vision for the cardiac surgical patients, so a lot of us have worked in cardiac surgery for a lot of years and really, really want to kind of improve the service and kind of get it back to sort of pre-COVID days as well, and sort of improve the pathway and streamline that again. And what we really enjoyed was actually walking in each other's shoes. So we kind of switched areas that we went to. So for us that were in ICU, we actually went to the ward, and then the ward staff went to ICU. So it was good to sort of see how things are in the other environment, what pressures they're under, have conversations with the staff there. That was really, really valuable. And being in sort of a safe space, all of us together this week, you know, we've had a lot of the MDT there, and had some open and honest conversations that can often be difficult if you can't all get together in the same room, and can be difficult over Teams. So that definitely went well this week.
And what could we do differently? So unfortunately, due to clashes in diary commitments, the consistent medical representation wasn't there for the whole week. So that would have been you know, a slight improvement had they been there the whole time. Also, as the week went on, we realised that some roles that were vital in this work hadn't been invited. So that was a bit of a shame, but that has been rectified as the week has gone on, and we know now who we need to involve, and they have been involved from now. We also found that it could have been a larger event. 3 days was only just scratching the surface, really, of the amount of work that we would like to improve on. It could have been a larger 5-day RPIW event, really, for the amount of work, and also doing it outside winter pressures would have helped for times and things for us.
So, and this is the car park that we all discussed. So we shared this with the process sponsor, who have acknowledged and taken these on board. We've also have future PDSAs that we would like to implement, but we need medical representation to take ownership of those. So we're currently trying to seek out a process owner from the medical team to be able to take the ideas forward with that. But the sponsors have acknowledged these, and we've had discussions, and we knew there would be, because it's such a large service, lots of conversations around some of the areas that we would like to improve but weren't within GIFT, such as point of care INR machine and blood gas machine would help with patients on L16, and as you can see, quite a few others within that space. And this is our newspaper. So this is our tool that allows us to track the process of our PDSAs, and allows us to provide accountability to carry any future changes with a mindset of potentially upscaling it to future events within the service. And then I'd like to say a huge thank you to Natalie Buchanan, who was a nurse who collected a lot of the data for this event as she was working, to our sponsors for allowing us the space to be able to have the event and to make those improvements, and also to Dr. Tim Palfreman, Dr. Richard Gold and Dr. Satoris, who were a part of the event on for the day 2 and did attend, but were unfortunately not able to make the whole event. And that is us. Thank you very much for listening.
Brilliant, thank you, team. That was, yeah, lots of applause. I'm not surprised. It's a huge thing you've attempted there. I hope you're not disheartened by some of those final scores on the doors, because I mean, you couldn't have done it on a more difficult week, could you really? And you know, I can really see the progress and kind of that standardization and working through the Leeds Improvement Method is brilliant. And I was looking at those things you said you'd do differently, and I think for me, yes, you could have done all those things differently, but you probably wouldn't have got started this week, and you'd have had to wait for a few weeks to do something else. And actually, but the act of getting in and doing it, and you go, oh, okay, we do need to involve some other people. We can do that. We do. You learn so much by doing this. I'm really pleased you kind of got on and did it, and learned those lessons and started getting those standard ways of operating in place. So I think for me, it's a fantastic example of the Leeds Improvement Method, and I hope you can kind of carry on with those ideas and build them into the ways of working across the team. And that, you know, the good thing you said about staff engagement as the top thing you felt went well. I've been doing projects for quite a long time, 30 odd years or so, and without doubt the top reason for a project not doing well is that you haven't engaged the people who are involved in it. Over and over again, if you don't engage the people, you're never going to succeed. So it's fantastic to see that was right at the top of what you felt had gone well with this process. So a huge congratulations from me, and I kind of look forward to seeing the work progressing in the future. I don't know if anybody else has got any thoughts or any questions they'd like to raise with the team. We've got a minute or so. Oh, Jenny. Hello, Jenny.
Hi, everybody. If I've not said Happy New Year, it's probably still a bit late now, but good to see you all. I I think Paul took all of my thoughts out of my. No. I mean, it's just congruent. I'm, all improvement is good improvement, and shining a spotlight on the thing. I loved your car park at the end. That's all the stuff you want to go at, isn't it? And we've got to learn that we can't eat the elephant and just go, it looked like it was grey yesterday and it's going to be pink tomorrow. Our business is just way, way too complicated for that. And we would have done those easy to turn from grey to pink things, wouldn't we, by now? So I thought that was phenomenal. And I am genuinely shocked that you did it in the week that you did. I think that's bold. I think that's massive to be applauded, and I think it's brilliant. I think it was brilliant.
Yeah. No,
the snow was definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
No flew. I mean, just well done for doing. I'm not being paralysed and put off by those things. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jenny. Any more? No, wait. Tom, Ruth, Cassie, Vicky, Paula, fantastic report out. Great piece of work. Really appreciate it. Keep up the good work. And we'll have another report out next week. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thanks very much.